Over to you, Dawit.
Welcome again to all the representatives from the ISOC chapters and partner organizations. My presentation will be about Internet of Things security and what we call trust by design. It will be talking about security and privacy of smart home devices and services. Internet of Things means different things for different people, so I think it's good to start with a kind of definition. The Internet of Things refers to new types of devices that are connected to the Internet. Traditionally, the Internet was a network of computers, switches, and routers, all linked together to communicate. But what happened with Internet of Things, devices, things that we use every day, like our watches, our eyeglasses, our TVs, our cameras, are starting to be connected to the Internet, providing new services to us. Some examples. Wearable techs. I don't know how many of us here have, I see that Mokhtar has a smartwatch. Can you tell me how many people here have smartwatches? Okay, a few of you. I'm sure next year, probably half of the room will have it, and the year after, almost everybody will have smartwatches. Smart glasses. I didn't know about smart shoes, but Kevin will have to explain to me what is that. Of course, smart cars. Our cars are becoming smarter and smarter. You have, your cars that help you navigate. But in fact, we have gone as far as having cars that are, that can drive themselves. And that is not science fiction anymore. In fact, it is expected that by 2025, we will have smart, self-driving cars on many cities' roads. Smart cities, cities are using more and more IoTs to improve traffic flows, measure water, measure electricity, and I'm glad to say that we have now here a company that who will present about smart meters at this conference. Monitor and protect citizens. So we have cameras all over our cities that are connected to the Internet. Smart manufacturing, using of IoT devices to improve the efficiency of manufacturing in all our industries. Research, we use IoT devices to measure almost everything, air quality, water quality, whatever. And the number of IoT devices and systems connected to the Internet will be more than 5 times the global population in 2022. So this is a staggering growth, and we are already seeing much of that growth all over the world, including in the developing world. But as we have more and more devices, we see some of the problems that come with them. For example, we see privacy concerns, security risks, etc., that are increasing every day. Sorry. And whenever you have new devices, at the beginning you have the excitement of having a smartwatch, having a smart TV, etc. Then we start seeing some of the vulnerabilities that bring new concerns for our security and our privacy. And IoT devices, we might say that these are just computing devices, but they come with new properties that bring new vulnerabilities. For example, the costs of the devices are generally so low that you can find them anywhere. Their size is so small that you can bring them everywhere. I remember those days where you were asked to leave at the gate of important organizations like embassies your computing devices. Nowadays, it won't be possible because you'll have your eyeglasses might be smart, your watch might be smart. What are you going to leave? A very good example of that is what happened with the journalist that had been killed in the Saudi embassy in Turkey. The Saudi embassy thought that by searching him, by asking him maybe to leave his computer, his mobile, they are safe. But they realized too late that he had a watch that recorded everything. So nowadays it is very difficult, to make sure that someone is not entering with a device that is communicating with the rest of the world. The volume of identical devices is very high. You can have millions of cameras around the world. What's the problem with that? The problem is that a vulnerability of those devices can have a major impact on the internet, like it happened with the Murai problem, I think it was in 2016. Long service life. You can buy a device and you can leave it somewhere and it can stay for years, sometimes without anyone remembering that that device even exists. And a major problem is that sometimes it is not possible or it is very difficult to upgrade or patch those devices. Everybody knows by now that there is no 100% secure computer. We know that when you buy a computer that there are vulnerabilities that the only thing is that they are not yet detected. So what do we do when it is known that there is some vulnerability in, for example, an operating system? Can you tell me what happens when it is known that there is a threat in Windows version 10 or whatever? What happens? There is a patch that is developed by Windows. And is it enough to have that patch? No, it's not. What should happen? The devices, your computers, should upgrade, should patch the operating system. But with IoT devices, very often they are not even patchable, and even if they are patchable, it's very difficult to do that. Therefore, you have many devices all around the world that have vulnerability that you cannot even solve. Physical security. They are so small, they are everywhere, and it is very easy for someone to come and do something about them. Limiting access of those devices is difficult. So they have limited user interface. They are generally very small, and with limited user interfaces, that is a limitation to solve the problems as well. So I'm going to go very quickly. Some of the devices are embedded. They are in our fridge and etc. And it's very difficult to even go there. And sometimes those devices are used for things that were not even intended. Okay? So they might be, for example, a camera that was expected to be used in conference rooms, then they are used at places that you don't even expect them to be used, with bringing new vulnerabilities. And bring your own IoT. That is a problem that existed with bigger devices, and now it's even more complex with IoTs, because you take your IoT devices, for example, here. Mokhtar might be from the African Union, but those of you who are not from the African Union, you have brought an IoT device that the African Union Commission will have to consider when thinking about securing its systems. Okay? So it's a new vulnerability for the African Union to deal with. So what kind of risks? Unlocking doors. When door locks are connected to the internet, someone can compromise the security and unlock doors that shouldn't be unlocked. Turning on cameras. For example, I don't know if you have those things, but most of us at Internet Society have those camera, how do you call them? Camera, what is the name? No, it's not webcam. It's to hide the camera. Why do we use this kind of mechanical device? It's just mechanical. It's just to hide the camera. Why is that? It's because nowadays someone can compromise your camera and record, see what you're doing, even when your computer says that the camera is off. Okay? So that is a problem. And you don't want, when you are in an important meeting, which is everyone to look at you to record your voice, etc. So you can have theft, which is enhanced with IoT. And sometimes people's safety might be at risk because of IoT devices. You can have large IoT attacks, like the one that happened with Mirai botnet in 2016. That happened because of cameras around the world that were not well designed. So there were people who managed to attack those cameras so that they send a large amount of data on the internet, creating denial of service for many systems. And in fact, the global internet was highly impacted for several hours because of that. So the challenge we face is, as the world is more and more connected, there are a lot of promises for convenience, efficiency, and insight, but we also add more risks. And since those devices are really small, cheap, there are more and more manufacturers that come, small manufacturers, that rush their products into the market without consideration of security. And that is quite a big problem. There are some challenges that I have mentioned, so cost, size, functionality, time to market, future-proofing. These are some challenges for manufacturers. For services, new users that were not anticipated, the volume, the massive volume. Sometimes users become vulnerabilities themselves, and we have limited insights on the future. Consumers, it's cheap, so we tend to buy without really thinking. For example, some of you have heard about, the smart dolls. So families buy dolls for their kids that say, that answer to questions. Okay, things like what's the weather today or whatever, and the kids like it. But what the families didn't know was that they were bringing problems in their families because, predators, for example, can communicate with their kids through those doors, etc. And sometimes they are naive users, and it's not really particular kind of users who are naive. All of us can be naive with new technology. And there are a lot of opportunities for do-it-yourself, and that also brings some vulnerability and flying blind, we don't know where we go, etc. So who is responsible for bringing security? Who can secure IoT and bring security, privacy as well? The problem is that I wish I could say, well, the African Union can do that by itself. It would have been a very simple solution. But unfortunately, it can't. And there is no one who can do it by alone. Developers and users of IoT devices and systems have a collective obligation to ensure they do not expose others and internet itself to potential harm. Okay, so we need to work together. We need a collaborative approach to solve this problem. And you see in the figure there that there are so many organizations, so many, parties that have to work together to secure IoT. Platform developers, app developers, operators, device vendors, device manufacturers, of course, policymakers and regulators, network operators, users, retailers, app service operators. All of these are concerned. If they don't work together, they cannot, we cannot really ensure that we have better security in the future. So the Internet Society is working for a better Internet. We want manufacturers and suppliers of consumer IoT devices and services to adopt security and privacy guidelines to protect the Internet and consumers from cyber threat. We want to educate users on the importance of IoT security and privacy and work with all stakeholders as we have done, we are doing in Senegal, but we are doing in Canada as well, so that we have a better security and privacy. There is a role for everyone to play in securing the Internet of Things. That is why we have tried to bring together parties from wider sectors. What is the role of industry, service providers, retailers? there are very simple things that can be done to improve considerably the security of IoT. I will just mention one example of things that manufacturers, retailers, etc. can do. One of major vulnerability, in fact, that made the Mirai attack happen is that most IoT devices are sold with common passwords. So, for example, it is admin, admin. What's the problem with that? The problem is that most users are not IT people and they don't change those passwords. As a result, it makes things very easy for people to attack those devices, and since those devices are sold in millions, the harm is considerable, especially on the internet infrastructure. So an easy thing to do is not to sell any product with a standard password. Okay, the password should change from user to user. Is this something difficult to do? It's not. But it can help a long way in the security. Pushback through supply chain, I'll have to ask Kevin to explain that, but I think we can pass it for now. Curate offerings, only carry products that clear the bar. So there is, in fact, I should have indicated that what we mean by commit to framework principles. There are a few principles that if everybody abides to those principles, can make the IoT devices much, much secure. For Internet Society, we have chosen that a framework which is called the OTA framework that we believe can really help secure IoT. So we encourage you to learn more about OTA, and I think we are going to talk about it today. There are other frameworks, but we encourage you to abide to one. I hope that this will be the framework that will be chosen in Africa. Role of consumers, prioritize security and privacy in reviews. So when we go and purchase IoT devices, we should inquire about. We ask about the price, about the functionality, but security and privacy should be one of our concerns. Educate consumers to make smart choices. Announce partnership with Consumer International. So we have, at Internet Society, we have signed a partnership with Consumers International so that they use their wide coverage of the world to bring awareness on IoT security within consumers. So with policymakers, we would like to work with policymakers to create a policy environment that favors strong security and privacy features in IoT products and services. We need smart regulation that strengthens trust and enables innovation. So I'm sure regulators agree with me. Regulation is not easy. If you want to, sometimes regulators go too far, and that really stops or at least decreases innovation. This is not what we are asking. What we are asking is that regulators know about the risks and work with all the stakeholders as the Senegal regulator has agreed to do, to find what are the smart measures to take in order to limit the risks while allowing innovation. So what can policymakers do? Strengthen accountability and stimulate security and privacy best practices adoptions. We support industry adoption of best practices. I have mentioned one, but there are many things to do, and they can push the industries if they exist locally, and the vendors to make sure that what they import are good products in terms of privacy and security. Support industry adoption of the best practice principles from IoT trust framework. Foster technology and vendor neutral solutions. Make smart use of regulatory tools through well-defined responsibilities and clear consequences. Data gathering, IoT in the African region. So we are working right now with ISOC chapters and other partners in the region to know the situation in Africa, because as I said, sometimes there is, people say, well, you are thinking too much, too far ahead. This is not our problem. But even our small assessments show that there are a lot of IoT devices already in Africa, and they are already creating problems. So we would like to do some more assessment together with our chapters, and one of the reasons why we have them here is to find ways to work together to find solutions, or to gather information at least. This information will help us coordinate efforts in IoT and know what type of IoT devices are available in the region, are being developed, for what they are used, etc. And this will help, we hope, policymakers, regulators, as well as operators to know what to do in this regard. So if you are aware of anything that is happening in Africa, if you have organizations that gather data, organizations that do something for IoT security, please tell us. We have a number of staff members from ISOC, Internet Society, here. You can talk to them, including myself. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dawit, for that presentation. Maybe we can give a few minutes if there is anyone with a burning question or comment to Dawit before I call upon the two next speakers to talk about the overview of IoT in Africa and also what we can actually do with this. Kevin, you can direct us on this. So whilst Kevin is doing this, anyone? Okay. There's a hand. Dawit, please go ahead.
I didn't quite get it. You said bring?
Yeah, bring your own IoT. When one of the problems with, even before IoTs, one of the problems for system administrators, for example, in an organization, is when you go with your laptops to go and work in your company. So the system administrators might make sure, for example, there is good antivirus, whatever, on this computer. But when you go and you work in your organization with your own laptop, then you might not have antivirus. You have your watch, you connect it with the Wi-Fi of your organization, you create a vulnerability. If your watch is not secure, then you make the whole organization unsecure. Okay? So in the old days, the work of the security people from an organization was very simple because they had to secure just
there are organizations established to give validation and verification for standard products. For instance, self-driving car. The software need to be strictly validated. I think before even they are writing the software, they validate the requirement. So what is the role of such organization in securing the Internet of Things? So how can we see the interplay between these, different organizations? The one is controlling, the other is producing. So rush to market, the fact that they have the product, can they sell and bring something to the market without getting the validation and verification of such organizations? Thank you.
Thank you. This is a good question. Yes.
I would just like to remind, if you have a question, you start by your name and your organization. That would be better to identify.
I'm really sorry. My name is Malaku. I am from Addis Ababa University, lecturer in School of Information Science. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Malaku. Yes, for example, smart cars, I am sure there will be a regulator that will be concerned about that, that will be working to make sure that those smart cars are, well certified. But that is not true for everything. That is not true for smaller devices for which there is no regulator. I don't know if there is a regulator for cameras. I don't know if there is a regulator for smart TVs. Okay? So these are the kind of things that we have to discuss and find out what do we do. And the Mirai attack, for example, happened through cameras. And I don't know what is the next IoT device that will be used for this kind of attack. So, yes, for some bigger devices, there is a regulator, and thanks God. But there are many other devices for which currently there is not even discussion on regulation.
Thank you, Dawit. I think I will stop the discussion here, and there's an opportunity for us to explore more into a discussion, but maybe it's sufficient for us to, for this moment, explore the emerging trends in IoT. So I'll call upon Davis. I think I'll also call upon Lisa to also join me on stage here, so that we quickly have their presentations, and then we can go into discussions. To you, Oscar, Davis.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Davis Onsakia from the Internet of Things, Special Interest Group at ISOC level. I'm here to take you through the global trends in IoT, what's happening, what's expected to happen, and how you can be able to, be ready, be prepared. As Dawit said, I think Africa lags behind, and I think it's not good to be lagging behind. It's a good idea even to lead. When you lead, you make mistakes, but as you make mistakes, you make strides, and those strides can be able to take you somewhere. Basically, the tagline for this is anything that can be connected, be connected. I think that tagline basically indicates you have smartwatches, as Dawit has indicated, and many IoT devices are coming up. So they expect to be connected, and at some point they'll be connected. And the bottom line, like the foundational computing infrastructure, will be IP version 6. I believe that has been talked over and over again. I will skip some slides because most of the work has been done, the introduction has been done by Dawit, but clearly we will see the trends and all that. We are going to follow the following structure, which you can be able to see on your screen, on the screen. I'll skip the introduction bit of it. We talk about the benefits of IoT, which briefly Dawit has mentioned. We talk about application and use of IoT. We talk about challenges, which also he has mentioned. What needs to be done? We need to do something. We cannot just sit and watch. And basically, this meeting is part of what we need to do and what we are doing now. Also, we look at the top trends, technologies in the IoT space. And also, we talk about the future of IoT. And then we have a Q&A if necessary and if there's a question. I'm going to skip that. The question, somebody can ask, why IoT? If you look at basically what Dawit has introduced, IoT is introducing a lot of mesh, not mess, but mesh, interconnection of connections, and data is flowing. And if you use that data and analyze that data, you can be able to operate more efficiently, better understand your customers, deliver enhanced customer service, improve decision-making, and increase the value of business. And this comes as a result, are you analyzing that data correctly to get the correct insights and trends? Like if you have smartwatches, somebody might want to know how many smartwatches are here. You want to know if there is Apple watches which are in Kenya, or in Ethiopia, or in Africa. Can he market more? Can he deliver more at an affordable cost to the African market, to the African continent? So by analyzing whatever the IoT devices are there, you can be able to improve a lot of things, customer delivery, you can be able to improve the supply chain, you can be able to improve even on the quality of the devices itself. How are they being used? There are people who might be using a smartwatch as a watch. The ecosystem, basically, where does it fit in the things of the world, basically? Like this it consists of a web-enabled smart devices that use embedded processors, sensors, and the communication hardware to collect, send, and act on behalf on data they acquire from the environment. This is extremely very important to understand this particular ecosystem so that you understand where, if you're talking about security, where does security come in, and how can you plug that hole if you identify. The devices must be web-enabled. It can't be a dumb device. It must be a smart, kind of smart to a specific extent that you can be able to sense the environment, be able to communicate whatever data it has or the environment it has been stored in, and be able to act on that data. Probably the action is deliver this information to a specific address or to a specific database which somebody can be able to access, and that's how you can be able to analyze that. And also all this communication happens through a gateway. And the gateway has to go through, because like if you're here and somebody is monitoring the devices you sold to Africa, you will go through the internet. The cloud is probably a cloud-based server somewhere where somebody will be accessing all the information of smart devices which have been, IoT devices which have been sold in the last couple of years. So there's the cloud bit of it, and there's the device itself, there's the sensor, and there's the data communication. Very, very important to understand the whole thing so that when we go to the other issues, you can be able to see where the challenges are. What are the top trends in terms of IoT? This is according to Ghana. It's not according to me. So it's very important, and I can be able to see this a respected research firm which does research a couple of years and sort of like extrapolates to the future to know what do you need to do, where do you need to be, what do you need to have in place if you want to tap into the opportunities in IoT space. The first trend, and this is not order priority, is artificial intelligence. It says, data is the fuel that powers IoT, and the organizations appeal to derive meaning from it will define their long-term success. Artificial intelligence is coming from the data you have, the data you're able to collect. What are you able to do with it? Very, very important. And I think this applies not only in the IoT space, but also almost we can say basically in the IT space as a whole. Artificial intelligence is making sense of the data you're getting. The second one, social, legal, and ethical issues around IoT. You are collecting data from people, and what deductions are you making out of it? What algorithm are you using to analyze that particular data? And that's why we have regulations like the General Data Protection Regulations in the UK. So it is very important you are collecting this particular data, but how are you using it? And we are going to discuss that in the challenges. What are the challenges in the IoT? You have given me a camera. I'm monitoring that particular camera from remotely from my office to see what's happening in my homestead. But someone else can be monitoring, the manufacturer can be monitoring my homestead the same way I'm doing, but he doesn't have permission. He sold to me, and that's where my transaction ended with him or with her. But unfortunately, I'm monitoring, and the person is monitoring. He's monitoring for malicious purposes. I'm monitoring because I care about security of my homestead. So those are some of the ethical and the legal issues about IoT, which you have to consider if we have to make an impact in the IoT space. The third one is infonomics and data broking. The theory of how do you monetize the data. I think at some point there's the issue about personal data protection, and somebody will be able to tell you that the personal data is the new fuel of the internet economy. How are you using the data you're getting out of the devices you are analyzing, out of the IoT devices which are out there? And it's possible, I think you have seen these particular instances which happen. If you sign off with the Facebook and all the other entities, but they end up selling your data. So also, when you sign off, like when you're buying these devices, there might be other, what I can call implicit agreements you're having, that I'm using this device, and probably the manufacturer might be monitoring to make improvements. Most of the times, those terms and conditions people tick without reading a single thing. Very important to understand what you're doing and which data you're giving and how possibly it can be used. And the last sentence there says, by 2023, the buying and selling IoT data will become an essential part of many IoT systems. As IT professionals, this is something which you have to take into consideration from the government, from private sector. How are you going to use that data? Probably, you see, like for those countries, I know very few countries in Africa have the data protection policy. But for those who do, maybe they say if you anonymize the data, you can sell it. But how anonymized can you anonymize data to be able that you can be able to make money out of it in a legal way? The fourth trend is the shift from intelligent edge to intelligent mesh. We are talking about relaying information from the IoT devices to the cloud servers, somewhere for analysis from a central location. But what happens? We are moving from that intelligence from the edge to the mesh itself, the communication. It's like we are talking about, like somebody might want to know, looks like because there was an IoT meeting here, there are a lot of communication coming from this particular room, from this particular AU headquarters, then probably another location within a dish. So the shifting of the intelligence is moving from the edge, and it's come to the mesh itself. So that somebody can be able to give more bandwidth to the flow of data from this particular location. Number 5, the trend number 5 is IoT governance. We have to ensure that there is appropriate use, storage, and deletion of information related to IoT projects, which will be increasing, which will become very important. Yes, please? Okay. Thank you.
Si vous permettez, il y a la traduction.
Please, the interpreter would like you to use your microphone when you are talking, and you do not speak too fast, too.
Thank you. So the fifth trend is, I was talking about IoT governance. We need to have a governance framework that ensures appropriate behavior in the creation, storage, use and additional information related to IoT projects will become increasingly very important. I think you remember the right to be forgotten case. Like you did something, it was taught, and you remember the internet never forgets. But again, there was that issue about your data. If your data is you did something, and something happens, can it be forgotten? You are connected to a specific IoT device, and the data was generated from probably your home. How can that, if you require, how can that information be deleted? Probably from the local IoT provider, or from the manufacturer, or from a legal perspective. Can you be able to make a recommendation that this data was captured, but I do not want it to be there? So the IoT governance structure and framework is very important. Something we cannot be able to ignore. If we are talking about regulating that particular space, we need to look at that particular governance model. Number 6, sensor innovation. Remember what we talked about, the ecosystem. The sensor bit of it is a very important thing. So we expect to see an evolution on the sensors so that you can be able to have sensors which can be able to detect different range of situations and events. Probably we are talking about a sensor in a greenhouse which can be able to detect humidity. We expect to see probably that humidity level, the way it senses that particular humidity and measures the same, can be able to improve as time goes by. And so this goes more to the manufacturers that they need to be ahead of the curve, that they need to innovating and need improving on the sensors we'll have in the market on IoT devices. Number 7, trusted hardware and operating system. The Ghana report says, by 2023, we expect to see deployment of hardware and software combinations that together will create more trustworthy and secure IoT systems. I believe if you have been attacked once, probably you're working on Windows, you want to shift. You want to say, I think Windows is not that good enough, and you want to shift to probably Linux. This is the same thing in the IoT space as well. We expect that the firmware running on these particular IoT devices will have to keep improving. They need to demonstrate some level of security implementation on those devices for me to be convinced that if I get this particular device to my homestead, if I can be able to use this particular device in my environment, it will be able to guarantee me some level of security. So we expect that trusted bit of hardware and operating systems. And here we are talking about really the firmware on the devices. Number 8, novel use. Being corrected. Remember, you can have the same data, but depending on the IoT devices. One of the biggest challenges of IoT devices is the power consumption. So we expect that this Ghana expects so there must be new mechanisms. And here the proposal which Ghana was giving is the use of 5G to be able to communicate. Because remember, it's about data. Data is increasing. Because the devices are increasing, we're going to see the numbers. The numbers are going to be in 20 plus billions by 2020. So we need a new wireless technology which can be able to accommodate that data to communicate from the IoT devices to a specific location wherever they will be required for analysis and analysis and trend analysis to be able to see what can they do better, how can they improve things. So those are the top 10 trends in the IoT space. This one was implied by Dawit, so I'm not going to talk about it. This one as well. This is just basically a brief summary. I'm not very sure whether you can be able to see. Have the air pollution, IoT devices monitoring the air pollution. We have forest fire detection. Remember, I think there are forest fires which normally stay for days on end. If you have IoT devices, you can be able to use that to contain the fire very fast. We have wine quality enhancing, for those guys who like wine. Yes, they can be IoT devices, you can be able to enhance the quality of the wine. Off-screen care, you can be able to put something. You can be able to put something on your children, in case you are away from home, which can be able to give you an idea of how they are doing. And many other areas, sportsman care, structural health, smartphone detection, perimeter access control, radiation levels control, traffic congestion. The smart car, which we talked about. You can have a car which can be able to take like this street you are on is going to have charm and alert you, please change direction and use the other street which might be clearer depending on your location. Electromagnetic levels control, smart roads, smart lighting. You are not in the house, switch off the light. Although that's happening to a certain extent right now. Intelligent shopping. Amazon.com has given an option where there's what called Amazon Dash, where you can click on it and you can order the things you have in your house which are IoT enabled. And you do not have to do anything. You don't have to give any more information. That's a very important area. And then there's water leakages detection, vehicle auto diagnostics, item location, waste management, smart parking, golf courses, and water quality. Those are some of the areas of the smart world of the future enabled by IoT. This is just some sample IoT devices, the Amazon Dash I was talking about. The smart farming, you can be able to use IoT devices in your farmhouse to be able to in a practical session. Then we have industrial IoT, where you can be where you can be able to use IoT devices in a factory to be able to measure what are the temperatures of the particular devices, how is it doing, even communicate to manufacturers if there's a malfunction, like the Boeing. If it was able to have an IoT device communicating to Boeing headquarters and indicating there's an error in this particular sensor, it can be able to be addressed before any proper disaster occurs. So that's the use of industrial IoT, in having a connected factory leading to a smart factory, and also where there's data flowing in, even you can see how this particular equipment is being used and how you can be able to make improvement on that. That's IoT in manufacturing, some of the test cases we don't want to go through. A bit of the challenges, this one was tackled by Dawit, security, privacy, data sharing challenges. And some of those, what you've discussed in the trends. So I'm not going to repeat on that. This is very important. I want to mention about this. Dawit mentioned about it, but I want to give this quick rundown. One, what needs to be done? Consumer education, he mentioned that. Users need to be aware. What you need to do, change the default password if you have it. Do what you need to do. Product reviews and comparisons. You are buying a camera, IoT-enabled camera. have a comparison of 2 or 3, see what they can be able to do, see what independent analysts have done about that, what have they said about this particular brand, about this particular model. It can be able to give you a very good idea on what you need to do. Vulnerability disclosure and vulnerability markets. It should be a requirement of manufacturer to indicate this device of mine is vulnerable in 1, 2, 3 areas, and maybe if you need to use it, you need to patch on 1, 2 areas. Those are very important you need to do. Self-certification and voluntary course of practice. Ideally, like industry, like probably you are in electronics, you can be able to have a partnership, kind of like a private alliance partnership, saying like our devices comply on 1, 2, 3. That's basically on self-certification and voluntary course of practice. So when I'm buying that device as a user, I'm looking and saying, this device, to a certain extent,
please, can you use the phone?
Okay, thank you. To a certain extent, this device complies with this particular self code, where you can be able to say that this particular device meets these particular requirements. Then there is 5, which we talked about. Trust marks and labels like...
Excuse me, can you be a bit slow down so that everybody listens? The presentation, I think, is very fast, for everybody. So thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much. It's only I'm trying to run also with time, but I feel like this is very important. Yeah? I'm trying also to manage time as well, but I feel like this is very important to take you through this. So, and that's why I say at least you can be able to read. Sorry about that. I'm trying to balance. Yeah? Thank you. The trust marks and labels like Internet Society, what we talked about, OTA, to have a framework like that. If we can have devices which indicate like this device complies with OTA, ISO OTA, that would be a big comfort to many of us, and also to the non-technical users. That's very important. And then the government initiatives. You know, the government has to protect the consumer. That's their role. So if the manufacturers and manufacturers are not doing their work, the government can step in and say, devices probably like Africa, which are coming in from outside, must meet these particular minimum requirements. But that would be the last resort. We don't want the government to intervene, really, when we come to the innovation space. But if you find like there's a challenge, they can and they should, because we need to protect ourselves, we need to protect our citizens. And then there's mandated security requirements. That's another option which can be explored. Like now, the standard security requirements, a specific ISO standard, that you comply with that. That's an international standard. And once I see that mark on your product, on your device, I'm comfortable that this has gone through an independent verification exercise, so I can be able to use this device without a lot of doubts at the back of my mind. That covers also mandated certification. Mandated certification is where the government will say devices coming in must meet this requirement. It's not an option, you must follow it. And that requirement is not per se the requirement, but it's an international agreed requirement, probably like from the AU perspective, saying for Africans, devices coming to Africa continent must meet this particular minimum certification level. Compliance standards in the IoT space. Okay, thank you. So, like, if like the ability from what I was talking about, this device is not working, the cost is not borne by the user, but it's borne by the manufacturer, and the manufacturer is forced to pay or recall the device, like happens with cars and all that. And there's another last one, no intervention. Innovation space, sometimes you can operate with no intervention. And it can work. So far it has worked because there's been no much intervention in that particular space, and that's where we are. Also, that can be explored as an option. I think I'll be able to stop there. And I think this can be able to be shared with you at some point, I believe. And you can
is IoT still relevant for Africa? And Lisa has some perspectives on that. She wants to share some ideas of what
and I am also a very amazing woman. I mean, you can see that. But there's a disconnect. It's just the same as IoT and its use in Africa. So IoT as a technology has endless possibilities within the global space. I mean, IoT will bring solutions to how I make my toasted bread, how I wash my clothes, how I exercise. But what is IoT for the African context? It's very important that as we gather and talk about IoT as a technology in an African setup, that we look at the context of the issues that Africa faces. So as you can see, Africa faces quite a number of problems which are health-related, poverty. We have issues of quite a number of issues of urban decay, etc. So I'll just give an example of what we did as the Zimbabwe chapter. Last year, December, we did an IoT meetup, and part of the event was to create innovation. It was a hackathon. And we said that we want young people to come up with innovations that really address African problems for African users. So we identified key issues and in Zimbabwe, specific issues, and the groups were able to come up with problems for Africa, by Africa. So that's very important, that as we look at the future of IoT, we look at the context of what we're doing exactly. So in my presentation today, I'll look at 4 key issues. The first one is hunger. I'll also look at the health crisis that we experience in Africa and a little on urban decay as well as education. So to address hunger, IoT in agriculture is a very important technology, and it's very important that when we talk about agriculture, we also talk about how the technology will improve efficiency and yield, thereby addressing issues such as hunger, because Africa faces climate change issues, and that means that there is reduced yield in agriculture. That is crop production, animal production, and even agricultural engineering. And I believe that IoT as a technology will improve yield by improving the efficiency and the use, for example, irrigation, for example, even in greenhouses. So it's very important that when we go out there and like back in our chapters and we talk about IoT in our countries, we really emphasize on aspects such as agriculture and go to the grassroots and see how the people can actually use IoT to impact agriculture in their countries. Also health. We have a health crisis because health access has become very expensive as time goes on. And within the African context, there is the underserved communities, particularly in the deep roots of the rural areas where they cannot access health. There's also poor management of information, healthcare information for patients in hospitals. We still use papers and files, and they have proved to be very inefficient and also perpetuates corruption and inequality with regards to access to health. And I believe IoT will come in and address some of those issues within our African context and also provide affordable healthcare to people in the underserved communities. Settlement dynamics, which will address issues such as urban decay, is very important. Urban areas play a very important role in economic development. However, within our African settings, we realize that most of the cities are decaying. Most of the cities are experiencing crime, pollution, congestion. But IoT will come in and address some of those issues and provide efficient flow of pedestrians, efficient flow of goods and services, as well as service delivery. Issues such as water and sewer infrastructure could be improved if we really look at how IoT as a technology can influence that. So also it's important to partner with local government and educate them on some of those technologies, and so that they realize that IoT will really become a very good technology within the future of Africa. And the most important as well is education. IoT will come and bring improved quality and access. We are Africa, but we are also part of a global village. That means we also want to catch up with the rest of the world. So IoT and technology will ensure that our children and as well as ourselves receive improved quality and access to information and access to up-to-date information. So in conclusion, this is me and my husband again. This is me and my husband again. I mean, we could do better with my husband. I mean, if we look at the issues and the problems that we're facing, this could be us, happily ever after. It's just like IoT in Africa. IoT is good for Africa, but we need to look at the context. We need to look at the solutions that really work for Africa, and this could be Africa with IoT. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Lisa, for that concise and excellent connection of IoT and the challenges we do have in Africa. I think we'll open the floor to a few questions, comments for Lisa and Davis. Davis, you're back on your seat. You're supposed to be here. So I'll take the first 3 or 4, and then you will see how it goes. If there are more comments, we may want to stretch them beyond, maybe after tea. So I'll start with you, and then this side, and then I'll come to this side. So
thank you very much. My name is Ali Simba, the Executive Secretary of East African Communication Organization. I have to have a comment. I would just like to ask in the room if there's anyone coming outside the ICT industry in this room. How many? Anyone coming from the agriculture industry? Yeah, I think this is one of the issues I wanted to point out, that in Africa we still look at IoT as something trendy for, technology, watch and whatever, but they really use it in the agriculture, in the other sector of development, and these sectors have been left behind. When we do awareness, we usually meet the same people from ICT probably, but the users are in the other sectors, and this is the same mistake we did when ICT was coming up, and we are talking about ICT being the cross-cutting enabler for all sectors, but we used to make all the decisions at the ICT ministries and industry, and I think this needs to change. That if the use of IoT with industries, with agriculture, these people need to be involved. That is what I wanted to point out. And again, I'm very happy that at last, at the end, Lisa gave us the good story. I wanted to say there's a lot of good story in Africa. Thank you.
Merci beaucoup. Je m'appelle Serge Parfait, Goma.
Thank you very much. I'm Serge Goma. I come from Congo. I want to thank Davis and Lisa for their presentations. Their high-quality presentations. I have a question, but it's more of a comment, and I hope we'll be able to get some solution, even in the question I will be asking. I saw the Davis presentation that was talking about very important points, but one of the issues that I did not see, or I didn't see any refocus on, concerns data sharing between connected objects, the individual concerned, and the industries that manufacture those devices. Let me take the example of any kind of object that can transfer its data through some cloud, and the cloud takes the data to an individual for use afterwards. Now, the question is this. What are our states going to become with all of...
Qui sortent du continent, qui partent, qui ne sont ni gérés au niveau de... exploités, je veux dire, au niveau de nos institutions, au niveau de nos pays,
même own countries, and not even used in our companies. What I mean is that in the future, it is a great part of Africa's wealth that is leaving the continent. Is there a mechanism for monitoring? Is there some reflection on this particular issue to see what can be done? Thank you. That's my question.
South Africa.
Thank you. Mainly, my comment would be on if we're speaking about devices, we should be speaking about specific devices. and we should be more specific because there are devices that are currently existing that are collecting a lot of data, especially things like VR, virtual reality, and 3D printing. 3D printing is a device, it's an IoT device, because if I can use my smart glasses to capture an image, I can print it from there without even attending the printer physically. So that's one thing. And then my question would be then around, Mo Africa and Portuguese, French. So there is no native language. So we're not focusing at empowering ourselves as Africans. So we keep talking about data leaving the country. What about the language? Because that's where the important part is. If we want to educate our people on IoT, on fourth industrial revolution, we should think about the language, because that's where the problem is. We know the dominance of the internet language is Chinese, and that's huge. So we should look at that very carefully. And I believe that if we're going to build African solutions for African people, we should build them in African languages.
Thank you. Yes, please.
Alors, merci. Moi, c'est
Thank you. I'm Lamin Keita. I come from the Guinean chapter. I am what we call the defenders of internet security in my country. Now, when concerning what Davis has said, I want to speak to the Africa's situation. We are the African Union, which means where all African rules have been discussed. And we are now discussing Internet of Things as if we are in France or in the United States where there is no rule. My issue is that before we move, we should first work on the technical and security aspects. We should first understand the existence of these connected things, because in most cases, one thing that is not very clear for many these objects. Many people have these objects, but they don't even know what they are. Somebody has a smartphone or a smartwatch or a connected thermostat, but they don't even know what the use is and the demerits of those devices. And that's something that is a luxury and so on. Those objects are good, but many people do not know the vulnerabilities and the demerits. Many people don't know it. So we are, in Africa, we need to begin with educating the users of those devices and objects. So I would like to talk about African solutions for African solutions. That's a very good thing. And the best reality that we have, well, in my opinion, is the very first step. We cannot do the same things like the other things other countries have done. It is true we cannot reinvent the wheel, but Africa really needs to do what I would call or adopt different steps so that we don't waste a lot of time on certain stages to get to the stage where we can be able to protect the African populace. We are here in Africa at the African Union, and we are here. We have highly intellectual people, but behind us in the countries, we have many people who don't even understand what we are talking about. We need to educate our people about what a connected object is or a connected device is, and carry out this kind of sensitization or awareness raising, and then work on the technical aspects and then address these security issues. But we need to first educate the consumer, because it is, for me, this is what we can propose, especially the African Union, and to all stakeholders. That's my comment and my question at the same time. Thank you.
What I've heard so far are really not questions, but what are the considerations we should add to this discussion? So I'll just get 2 or 3 other colleagues from this side, and then hand over to my colleagues to wrap up quickly. I'll take these 3 gentlemen. Please go ahead. And please make your comment as brief as possible.
Okay, thank you again. I think we need to be careful when we make generalizations. I think, the problem varies from country to country. And we have in Africa, I think, the tendency to categorize every category. The problem is not the same. Some countries have already addressed, the problems, and some of them maybe, it may be a challenge. So we cannot say that, Africa or the people in Africa do not understand what is going on in Internet of Things. So I think we need to be careful when we make generalizations. Well, I mean, everybody gives Africa as one country, and such generalization may not be, it may lead us to some wrong conclusions. So we need to be careful with that. And for instance, like IP version 6 and IP version 4, which country is using IP version 6, which countries? So we cannot say that Africa is not taking, IP version 6, or so such generalization may lead us to wrong conclusion, as I've said. And with regard to the comment, I think it's not a comment but a specific question for the first presenter. So you said what need to be done. For instance, the list of things you identified, the civil society, the technical community, and these important stakeholders are not really suggested in your list of what need to be done, right? So I suggest you to consider such important stakeholders in the list. Thank you.
Please, quickly.
Okay, thank you for the chance. And I've heard that IoT, there are a number of devices connected in the IoT, and the discussion so far we've heard was about security, privacy, trust, and so on. But in order to make those devices secured or protect our privacy, there has to be a standard. There should be standard or interoperable devices. Otherwise, whichever security mechanism we devise won't be enough to deal with those securities. Otherwise, the devices must be interoperable. So what do you say about this interoperability on the IoT devices and standards also? Thank you.
Thank you. Davis and Lisa, if you have... Oh, sorry. I'm really sorry. I'm really sorry. Please.
Yeah. I think we have to remind our African men that we exist. We are not here as rose flowers.
Name.
And you just didn't call us here. Yeah.
Name.
Yeah. So, Davis, I really enjoyed your presentation. But I must say you didn't disappoint as a Kenyan. You were running 100 meters in your presentation. Now, next time, try and be slow, because this is a new field. I picked on something about the need to have trusted hardware and trusted systems. And I think my South African colleague has raised it. But I wanted to emphasize that as we start thinking, we are saying we need. Who is going to fulfill this need? Are we as Africans thinking of how we can start coming up with our own systems that are trusted? We are sitting here, and I'm thinking there was a scandal about the systems here having surveillance, systems embedded in them. And I'm thinking we are still suggesting here we need trusted hardware, and then we will still go to the same people. So in our thinking, can we start thinking of practical ways of African systems that can protect us? Thank you.
Thank you, madam.
Sorry to jump in very good, but can people identify themselves when they speak from where they're coming from? Thank you.
Oh, sorry, I forgot that. My name is Grace Githaiga from the Kenya ICT Action Network.
My name is Nasreddin Suleiman from Addis Ababa University, Department of Computer Science.
Thank you very much, Grace. And I think it was going to be unfortunate if we had missed this important contribution. Any other lady in the house that needs to speak? Okay, I will then hand over to Lisa.
Okay, I'll just give a brief comment on some of the issues that were raised. So she mentioned on who is doing what, but I believe that such meetings or such gatherings and starting conversations is very important in any intervention or in any form of activism. So I believe we've started talking about it, and we have representatives here from all countries. So when we go back, we should ensure that we all have a role to play in ensuring that our devices are secure, to foster privacy and the important issues that we raised today. And also, when I looked at the agenda, I realized that we'll have time to cover much of the issues that my brother raised there. So let's hang on and see how the program goes. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I think, many questions. We don't have the answers. That's where we here. And I believe we should be able to come up with a memorandum of understanding kind of resolution out of this. I think that will address our concern, like we are talking. What are we doing? What is expected to be done? Do we expect those guys who have been doing those devices with like holes in them, continue doing the same thing? What are we doing as Africans? What are we doing? What are you doing as an African? I think that's the biggest question he's asking, and that question is directed to each one of us, and I think we can be able to do something. I think about it. I think before we close, we'll be able to get somewhere. I want to address slightly the issues which were raised, which were more of concerns, but I do not have the answers as I've said, but I think we can be able to put our heads together and come up with something. He raised, the Congo Brazzaville representative raised issues about sharing of data. What are we talking about? Data is just going out there and we are sitting here doing nothing. I think for me, the take should be, ideally, every country will be able to enact the data protection policy or privacy policy, data, protecting the data of its citizens. That's where you start from. And I think since we're in the AU can be able to push that to the representatives of their countries. I think that's the most important. You start from there, and that's where there was a reference of the channel data protection regulation in the UK. If we have that, something like that for Africans, definitely will be covered. But as it is, sorry, our backs are exposed. That's the naked truth. Also, we talked about, I'm not very sure whether you're the one who talked about the language on the devices. All of them, most of them are Chinese. Everything comes from Chinese clothing. A challenge to us. Can we do something? Can we develop our own devices? Can we manufacture them? Can we be, or if they are coming, can we pass them through some, like modification mechanism where you can be able to modify them to Swahili language, spoken for a couple of millions in Africa, the common like French language spoken by the most of the West African, Central Africa region. So I think still that's our challenge. The best thing I think we're in AU, the headquarters for Africa. We can do something, some resolution. If it comes out of this, I think might go a long way. My colleague from Guinea talked about security. We are talking about security. What are we doing it to? We are just talking about it, and there's nothing much we can do. Because as we have said, those devices are not being manufactured locally. If we start manufacturing those devices locally, I believe we can be able to go a long way to manage security issues on them. And we also can be able to manage even the data, how data is flowing, to who is it flowing. If you are tapping this particular information at any particular point, like man in the middle of attack, phishing in the middle of it, getting the data, what are you doing with it? I think unless we control the supply chain, I'm sorry, it might be a bit of a challenge. And I think that's a challenge to all of us. The colleagues from the University of Addis, yes, I think I remember the colleague from Guinea was proposing, what are we doing? Can we do have a resolution covering all countries? And they were raising the differences in geopolitics of Africa. But I think that's what I'm saying for me, as being here, the AU, Africa Union Headquarters, communicating to African states, anything coming out of this might have a lot of weight. So I think if we can agree, we come up with a resolution on some of these issues which you are raising, which nobody of us an answer and say, what you are proposing, it's not like we are imposing. What you are proposing to be implemented, what you are proposing to be registered, to have a legal teeth in your various countries is this, having this. it might go a long way in protecting us from whatever is happening in the IoT space. I think I don't want to mention anything about what Grace said. I think that's been covered by my colleague. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Lisa and Davis. Can we give them a hand again? At this moment, we are going to break briefly for tea. We are going to break for 30 minutes. So we are also going to have a group photo session by the African Union logo. So let's start with that, and then we break for tea.